I love Spanglish so much. I remember I was like doing press one day and I was like, sí, no, es demasiado full. You know, like, oh, my schedule, yeah, es super full.
¿Qué es un pichupín? And then my dad's like, oh, it's a push pin.
Ready, parquear, which means park. Bueno, airdropear, which means airdrop.
Voy a laquear el carro, ustedes voy a cerrar el carro.
I te guacho is like when you're leaving, you're like, I te guacho.
I'm always saying, pero like, how can you do that, you know?
Printadora, I know it's impresora, I know, but like we just don't say it, it's too formal.
Sí, pero va a ir a comprarte el auto nuevo, va a tirarte un salto. Dude, send it.
Spanglish, the blend of Spanish and English, is everywhere. We've seen it in movies.
Y me siento muy excited.
At the tippity top of the Billboard charts, in la tele, and on the radio.
Hey, Lois, I'm at the small bodega in the living room lobby trying to pick out a new baby cot for Janine.
Guess what? January, enero, right now, this month is the cheapest month to book flights.
And in commercials.
Mis amigos back home dicen que yo hablo en reggaeton.
I have dreams in Spanglish. I think in Spanglish. It's a literal lifestyle. I don't know how else to explain it.
While it's seeping into more aspects of our lives, Spanglish is by no means an official language in the US. But it begs the pregunta, what would it take for the hybrid language to go from algo que se habla en la casa y entre amigos to a mainstream language? And as the share of US Latinos who speak Spanish at home drops and those who are bilingual grows, could Spanglish one day overtake Spanish as the second most spoken language in the US?
Spanglish is a major phenomenon. I would say is the most important linguistic phenomenon in the Hispanic world, in the Spanish-speaking world, and also in the English-speaking world.
That's Ilan Stavans, a professor of humanities in Latin American and Latino culture at Amherst College. Stavans, linguist Lars Hinrichs, and these Spanglish speakers are going to help me decipher what the future of Spanglish could look like in the US. But first, some basics. Spanglish isn't only when you're talking así, mezclando words from both idiomas effortlessly. For example, saying a phrase like te llamo pa' atrás entirely in Spanish is a form of Spanglish too.
This is what in Spanglish is known as a false translation. We are translating an expression that is in English, I will call you back, literally. The authentic, the right version in Spanish would be te llamo de regreso o te devuelvo la llamada.
Here's another example. A literal and false translation of my phone died would be mi teléfono se murió. But morir isn't really used to refer to electronic devices in Spanish. A better translation would be se le acabó la batería a mi teléfono, which in English is the battery on my phone right now.
It's important to call attention to this fact that you can be engaging in Spanglish without using words in the other language, simply because you're thinking in a language but kind of projecting your words in the other one.
That's why some people refer to Spanglish as US Spanish. And no, Spanglish isn't something Pitbull or Selena created. The hybrid language's origins date back to the 19th century, right after the Mexican-American War culminated in large swaths of Mexico becoming part of the United States.
We have early written and oral versions of Spanglish that show up in places like Los Angeles and San Antonio, Dallas, Houston.
Today, Spanglish has expanded far beyond the US-Mexico border. Cities across the country have created their own versions of Spanglish, with Dominican Spanglish dominating New York and Cubanics filling the streets of Miami.
When you think of Miami, it's Spanglish. You know, everywhere you go order something, hola, puedo tener un número uno, a number one with a, you know, like it's like that, and people understand each other.
I mean, when I'm talking, I say a lot like, es que like, you know, to describe something, I'm always like, es que like.
And there's reason to believe that way of speaking will only keep growing. Hispanic people are expected to make up nearly 30% of the US population by 2060. At the same time, the share of Latinos that speak Spanish está bajando. 62% say they speak both English and Spanish, and 70% of young Latinos say they speak Spanglish.
Young people who grew up with Spanglish and are happy and they committed to it, they are entering the workforce, they are entering media, they are entering politics.
And as these young people who grew up in the hyphen enter the workforce, we're starting to see entire careers built around Spanglish.
If you can't catch me roaming in my barrio, I'm with my litas praying the rosario.
One of those people has combined what she calls her pocha Spanish with her Inglewood, California English and turned it into a multi-million-dollar entertainment career.
It's very normal for me to have a conversation in Spanish and say, ¿Cómo se dice? You know, and then say the English word, and then I'd be like, you get that, right? Like, you understood that? So now I don't even say the como se dice. Now I just say the word in English and go back to Spanish. And once I've made my own language, which a lot of us did, right? Which we identified as Spanglish, I just felt more confident and more comfortable. I felt more myself.
And she's turned that confidence into a real moneymaker.
¿Qué pasa, mi gente? Welcome to En La Sala, a show where I said Sala. What the heck? Does that happen to anyone else? That was like a total code switch moment here. Okay.
The singer's career has successfully straddled the line between both languages, with numerous chart toppers and with her Spanglish song Sin Pijama becoming Vivo's second most viewed music video in 2018.
I live by saying that we're not doing the crossover, we are the crossover. And we are, you know, the generations, the second and third generations that really identify with our Latinidad, right? Our Latin roots, but live also in the other 100%, which is growing up here in the US. And so it's so much more real. You know, it's just like nowadays I feel like we don't have to choose.
And it's impacted what's happening on the other side of the music industry, with 2008 ushering in a wave of Spanglish language radio stations in the US. And with it, a wave of young bicultural Latinx radio talent.
I worked at a radio station here in Los Angeles. It was a reggaeton radio station. And it's interesting because when they hired me, I knew that my Spanish wasn't 100% fluent, but I knew that I knew Spanglish really well and I knew English very well. And I've come to find that most of the listeners are people just like me. We listen to reggaeton. We love our Spanish music. Our parents, most of the time, they speak Spanish. We're mostly fluent in English, but we mix those two worlds together. And that's exactly how I would talk on the radio, or like a lot of the different gigs that I would do. A lot of the times they would be Spanglish.
Hey, what's going on?
Now, NBC 10's Miguel Martinez.
In news, reporters like Miguel Martinez Valle, who works for one of our sister stations, are becoming more commonplace.
I'm the morning show reporter for both. I do NBC stories, and then I'll turn around and I do the Telemundo noon show, or cut-ins. So I'm usually working on the same story, but with different interviews and different sound bites in different languages.
Yeah, Lucy, you might as well call me Elsa because I am Frozen. Brian, ¿cómo se encuentra por donde estás tú? Frozen, como la película de Disney, como Elsa, me imagino.
Miguel, definitivamente, así que let it go, coge una pala y ponte a limpiar también.
My first ever live shot for Telemundo 62. It was some kind of robbery in Philly. There was a lot of surveillance video. So I'm reporting, I'm like, y la policía espera poder usar el video de surveillance para encontrar al responsable. And my producer was my friend Katia from Vegas. And for the rest, because she went to San Francisco, for months, she would be like, video de surveillance. And I'm like, stop. Now, like, my rule on TV is instead of making up a word in Spanish, which is my biggest fear, I'm just going to say it in English if I can't remember.
All right, I'm gonna start. Shut up.
Perhaps where Spanglish has seen the most growth is the internet, with platforms like Instagram and TikTok becoming gold mines for Spanglish content.
It's still really cute, you know, very humble, very everyday, into looking like La Kylie. It definitely did open so many opportunities and doors for me because I was able to target both audiences. I still have so many viewers who will be like, Louis, haz más videos en español, like no te entiendo ni más, like I don't even know what you're saying in English. And then I do have like those other viewers who are like just English and they're like, Louis, I learned more Spanish from you than my Spanish teacher. And I'm like, period, así está, a mí me gusta.
And it's created a market for more serious Spanglish content too.
Iniciar o comenzar. I launched a successful marketing campaign.
Journalist, author, and entrepreneur Mariana Atencio creates code switching guides for people who need to alternate between English and Spanish.
Seeing people react to it in just such a positive way that you're like, oh, wait a minute, there's something here. And that's how the sort of English-Spanish tips came about. And since then, we launched a whole master class about code switching and how to use one language or the other, even when people are looking for business opportunities, which is obviously how it affects their bottom line.
And for the first time ever, we're starting to see Spanglish make its way into college curriculums.
Our university here is 70% Latinx, and a lot of our students speak Spanish, and I knew it was something that would be interesting to them. It's something that they would always ask about in my other linguistics classes, so I decided to create a whole course around Spanglish.
In fact, more than 40 colleges had Spanglish as part of their curriculum in 2016.
I see a greater sense of this is not a deficient way of speaking. It represents who I am. I have a hybrid identity. I have my feet in multiple cultures, and I need a language that reflects as much.
So, with Spanglish making inroads in different aspects of our lives, what exactly would it take for Spanglish to go from dialect to language?
The standard answer is from Max Weinreich, who famously said that a language is a dialect with an army and a navy. If somebody from a Spanglish speaking region of the United States were to start a political movement and got into political office, and they would need a lot of power and influence for it to become a language.
Does anyone come to mind? Maybe Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Senator Marco Rubio?
Su administración es muy corrupto.
Or the 30-plus other Latinx members of Congress, or maybe one of the multiple Latino Spanglish speakers on President Joe Biden's cabinet.
Being bilingual and bicultural, and as American as apple pie and rice and beans. En la unión está la fuerza.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Fernando, there are a ton of hybrid languages in the US. It's not just Spanglish. For example, there's Chinglish, Pol-American, and Hinglish, to name a few. Stavan says the steady influx of immigrants from Latin America and the fact that the United States shares an entire frontera with Mexico has helped the hybrid language spread faster than other ones.
There's a great phenomenon right now of people who are not Latino who are using Spanglish, because their workers are Latinos, because their audience is Latino, for economic reasons, for political reasons. It is no longer confined to the Latino population.
One of those people is Jimmy Rittenberry, a white American in Texas who speaks Spanglish because the people he works with in construction are Spanish speakers.
I cop to words like fulano and everything was a bitch. What you got for the weekend? Oh, here, a big old pachanga down at Mama's house, and Ricky and Beto and Lucy, todos van a estar ahí,
And for language purists who are disgusted by the thought of mixing Spanish and English, what if I told you that English you speak today used to be a frowned upon hybrid language?
English, at the time that the French came, was basically a dialect of Old German, and people were calling these animals pigs and cows, but the French came and then those words weren't good enough anymore. So as soon as something was cooked and served on a plate, there were new words that came from French. Pork comes from porc, and beef comes from bœuf.
It's very easy to decry the emergence of Spanglish as the death of English or the death of Spanish. And yet I think that Spanglish is something new, something very important. It will have an enormous impact in the future. And I think looking down at it is a snobby, pretentious approach, mostly by the educated elite, who wants to distance itself from the way people speak. But people are the ones who, in the end, are in charge of language.
But it's not enough for academics, politicians, and celebrities to embrace the language. The people have to accept it too. And when it comes to the Latinx community in the US, there has always been some resistance to Spanglish, especially among older Latinos.
You know, my parents would really get mad when we would mess up in Spanish.
She would kind of correct us and tell us like how to say it in Spanish. And I think that that's the reason why I'm very fluent in Spanish. Te dice así o no, no se dice así, or she'll be like, que no te entiendo, you know, so that we repeat it.
Ok, Domingo, ¿qué opinas del Spanglish? Pues que está muy mal eso porque la gente que habla inglés y habla español debería de hablar inglés o hablar español. ¿Y qué opina que lo mezclen?
No, pues está bien, a veces todo le ayuda a uno para ir aprendiendo un poquito, a veces palabras también.
¿Te gustaría que hablaran el español bien y el inglés bien o no le importa?
No, pues no sé, nunca se va a poder hacer eso porque todos los hijos de inmigrantes que nacen aquí, así están todas las familias.
You know, I think we get hung up on what we think we should be and not be, and we need to have more focus on the more important issues of our culture, like the colorism and the privileges that other people have, and really being there for those movements rather than bullying each other about if you said a word wrong.
Spanglish may never be one of the top 5 languages spoken in the US. But as some linguists say,
if you want to know what the future of a language is going to be, you need to look at the young people.
And this is how some toddlers across America are speaking right now.
We're gonna have uno a Latino. Where are... Oh, espera, se me nos va a quitar estos.
At the very least, I think we can all agree there's nothing quite as uniquely American as a hybrid way of speaking.
Where now it's like, oh my God, your kids are bilingual, how cool, you know? How are you doing that?
I know, I want my kids to speak Spanglish one day. I'm just really happy that we're accepting of, you know, a space that a lot of kids like myself, you know, can be without judgment, because I think that that's how we really learn to accept and embrace our culture, when we're not judged for it, or we're not made to feel less than.
Vamos a poner todo back to American. Aquí está the last one. Aquí está uno.
Hi everyone, Fernando Hurtado here. Thank you for checking out the NBCLX YouTube channel. For more videos, click here. And be sure to click the subscribe button right here and join the NBCLX community.